Hi everyone, Amma Marfo here, currently a higher education speaker and consultant with Fun Enterprises, but as you can tell, I'm not actually here. I got called away to a conference in Ohio, but I did want to make sure that I shared this presentation with you and had the opportunity to talk about creativity and why it's so important to me. Now, I recognize that this is a really big topic, and we're not going to be able to hit all of it in the 6 minutes, 40 seconds, now 6:20, that we do have. So please use my contact information at the end if you have any questions or want to chat further. I love talking about this stuff and want to help you do so effectively. So let's start with an Onion headline: Extension cord on stage steals spotlight from Jeb Bush during campaign rally. So obviously this isn't something that really happened, but the threat's pretty real of having something really important or really significant that we want to do that sometimes gets hindered by the execution or something that we've slapped together with an extension cord and some tape to get things done. And this is usually done to cover up something broken or something that's not working like it should, but we want to make sure is still effective. We don't notice right away when these situations are starting to wear or are damaged beyond the point of being effective. So sometimes an orange power cord is just, we needed to make it work quick, so we put this down and then didn't think about it again. New hires and new professionals and people that are willing to think a little bit creatively can see these orange power cords for what they actually are. It's a solution, a means to an end, but maybe not the best way to get something done. And as you stay in a situation longer and new things come at you, you forget. And that's a problem. I think about that as we're looking to students in the classroom and everything that we're teaching them and how we're teaching them. Creativity is really hard to foster in an environment that's been the same for hundreds and hundreds of years. It survives far longer than it has any right to. So how can we help students get creative in these spaces, even though sometimes the situation may not always allow it? Most of us go into these situations guns blazing. We've got degrees, we've got high expectations for the kind of change we'll be able to facilitate, and we're going in and saying, this is going to change, it needs to be different, let's do this. But we don't always remember that that's something that not everybody's ready for, or the circumstances might not call for. So what do we end up with? Excited, energetic minds that turn into pop balloons. We do this 1,000 small ways every day. Phrases like, we tried this a few years ago. That's more of a this type of school idea, or my least favorite, that's not how we do things. So the design process was originally created for building new solutions to old problems, but it also works really well for problem solving. It's business and marketing minded, but it also happens to help bring new people into the conversation and new types of thinking. So let's think about this in terms of a problem on your campus. You're going to start with discovery. You're going to watch. This is where you start to figure out, maybe this isn't a solution, maybe it's just a power cord that's getting something done but isn't working the right way. You watch, you ask questions, and you learn about the background behind some of these things that you see as pretty commonplace. Then, interpretation comes in. So you dig pretty deep into the conversation. You get comfortable with it. You start to ask questions. You analyze how this issue for you may or may not be an issue for other people. And you really start to think about what would it take to make this different. Then you go into the ideation phase. Some of us start this a little bit early. So we're thinking, here's a problem, here's how we solve it. But ideation allows you to research and dig into the grounds of a problem, starting to create new things and starting to justify one solution over another. And it makes you really thoughtful about solutions that you propose. But then you still have to experiment with it. Even though you said, I think this might work, how can you pilot these things? How can you find out some of the potential problems that might come up in place? And how can you refine it before you execute it to ensure that as many potential roadblocks that could come into play don't slow you down when you finally decide to execute? And then launch. Going in and saying, rather than doing things this way, this is the new thing that we tried out. But you'll notice, launch is paired with evolution. Along with heading up into the sky, there's a lot of smoke and maybe even potentially fire that you'll run into. So how can you start to look at that as the next stage of going through and starting the process again? Now, the design process is important to go through because, going back to the launch analogy, think about Apollo 1. It was carefully calibrated, scientifically constructed, but when it came time to launch, it didn't work. But the space program didn't stop. It had to keep moving and had to start coming up with new solutions to things. So where can these sparks then turn into new conversations? Supervisors talking to you. You're going to be the ones to provide this context, saying, yes, this idea may have been tried before, but that doesn't mean that it's off the table now. So you have a very delicate balance of providing context, but also providing encouragement to change the story that may be told. And to those undertaking the process of implementing that change, couch your fact-finding and ideating around where you are, not around where you've been. Think about Dorothy Ann from the Magic School Bus, whose refrain was always, "At my old school, this is how we did it." Think about ideating as creating new solutions that fit your current environment, not necessarily what you've seen before or what best practices, as we call them a lot, end up doing. And remember, any changes that you're making, be it from a supervisor standpoint or from an execution standpoint, are designed to lead here, to students graduating the best versions of themselves that we could possibly be. So not just implementing new ideas for ideas' sake, but being able to say, what is this solution going to do to get students to where they need to be, to where they wanted to be when they started? What are you doing? What can you do to see some of those power cord solutions and turn them into actually well thought out, installed solutions, things that look complete, things that look finished, things that help students get to where they're going to go. And to do that, we have to start by not just looking for solutions, but looking for questions. So, what sorts of things might need a shakeup? Who do you need to talk to help make those shakeups happen? What sorts of ways can you start these shakeups happening? And then once they launch, what new things might you have to solve as a result? So once you start asking these questions, you're well on your way to taking those power cord solutions and turning them into long-term success. Thank you so much for listening, and please get in touch if you have any questions for me.